Doctors ran out of charts before she ran out of days. At a certain age, her medical file stopped making sense. Pages were added, notes stacked, margins filled, but the structure could not keep up. This matters now because modern life depends on models. We chart progress. We forecast decline. We believe if something can be measured, it can be managed. Her life quietly broke that belief. She was not supposed to reach this age. Not according to the first chart, not the second, not any that followed. Each prediction expired, replaced by another that also failed. At first, her life followed the expected arc. Gradual slowing, increasing caution, more appointments, more monitoring, the familiar pattern. Then time refused to cooperate. Years accumulated without collapse. Decline did not accelerate. It redistributed. Doctors adjusted language. They stopped giving timelines, stopped offering certainty. The chart stretched past their intended limits. What unsettled them was not longevity. It was continuity. Systems are designed for curves. Her life became a line. Steady, unpredictable, persistent. She did not feel exceptional. She felt ordinary. Days passed. Meals were eaten. Sleep arrived on schedule. Nothing dramatic marked her survival. The more time passed, the less useful prediction became. Medicine shifted from forecasting to observation. This created an unusual dynamic. She was no longer managed. She was accompanied. And in that shift, something important changed. Not just for her, but for how everyone around her understood time. Because when charts fail, attention must replace certainty. And attention, unlike prediction, demands presence. This was not the end of measurement. It was the end of confidence in it. And her days kept arriving anyway. This was only the opening of the story. As years passed, her appointments became quieter, not because there was less to discuss, but because there was less to predict. Doctors reviewed data with caution. They spoke in patterns, not promises. Language softened. Certainty disappeared. Her body aged, but unevenly. Some systems weakened, others stabilized. Nothing followed the expected cascade. The decline did not accelerate. It redistributed, adapting instead of collapsing. This unsettled the medical logic. Most charts assume momentum. Once decline begins, it should continue. Her life refused that assumption. What replaced prediction was observation. How did she sleep? How did she recover? How did she respond to stress? Small questions replaced big forecasts. Emotionally, this shift mattered. She stopped being a case study. She became a person again. Someone lived with, not analyzed toward an ending. Time changed texture. Days were no longer evaluated. They were experienced. The future was not a problem to solve. It was a space to inhabit. Family members noticed the difference. Fear loosened its grip. Conversations widened. They stopped rehearsing loss. They returned to presence. The conflict here was subtle, because medicine is powerful, but its limits were exposed, not as failure, as humility. Her longevity did not defeat science. It humbled it, forced it to acknowledge variance, that not all lives obey curves. And as the charts became less useful, something else became clear. Prediction had been doing more harm than help, because living under constant forecast shapes how life is lived. And when the forecast disappears, freedom quietly returns. This tension was building, not toward crisis, but toward insight, because when charts run out, meaning must take their place. The emotional peak arrived when the doctors stopped trying to explain her. They stopped searching for the missing variable, stopped waiting for the turn that never came. Instead, they watched, carefully, honestly, without expectation. This was unsettling, because medicine is built on anticipation, intervention before collapse, action before consequence. But her life demanded patience instead. She did not improve. She did not deteriorate. She adapted, again and again. When strength declined, balance compensated. When memory softened, routine carried her forward. Loss in one place was met with stability in another. The system never collapsed. It redistributed. This forced a difficult realization. Longevity does not always move forward. Sometimes it spreads sideways, across systems, across time. Emotionally, this was the hardest truth, because it meant there would be no moment of clarity, no clean explanation, no final lesson wrapped in certainty. Her family felt this tension deeply. They had waited years for resolution, for an answer that would make sense of everything. It never arrived. What arrived instead was acceptance, not resignation, understanding. They stopped asking why she was still here. They started asking how to be present with her, how to meet each day without forecasting the next. This was the true climax, because uncertainty, once embraced, stopped being frightening. It became spacious. Her life was no longer framed by outcome. It was framed by experience. Meals, conversations, quiet afternoons. The charts had not failed. They had reached their limit. And beyond that limit, life demanded a different kind of attention. In that space, something essential was revealed. Longevity is not always a story of extension. Sometimes it is a lesson in humility, in how little control prediction truly offers. And once that control was released, everyone involved could finally breathe. The final understanding was close, and it would change how her life was remembered. The realization arrived without resolution. There was no final diagnosis, no explanation that tied everything together. She lived longer than the charts allowed, because life is not obligated to follow models. Prediction ends where variability begins. Her days did not feel miraculous. They felt intact. Each morning arrived without negotiation. Each night closed without urgency. The doctors did not lose authority. They gained humility. They learned to accompany instead of forecast, to observe instead of define, to stay present when certainty failed. This is why her story matters now, because we rely heavily on prediction. We build identities around numbers. We let charts decide how cautiously we live. But her life demonstrated something quieter, that when prediction runs out, attention becomes more important than certainty. And attention changes everything. She was no longer a problem to solve. She was a life to witness. And witnessing requires patience, not answers. Longevity, in the end, was not about exceeding expectation. It was about existing beyond explanation, remaining present when systems step aside. Her story will not be remembered for how long she lived. It will be remembered for what she revealed. That life continues even when we stop understanding it. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. Dr.